Okay. Let me start the actual slideshow. Okay, so welcome to the Quality Assurance Orientation for the VA.gov platform. Today's agenda, we want to talk briefly about just getting started with QA on the platform, and then move on to talking about the QA standards. And after that, we're going to talk about some tools and technical information relevant to just working on the platform. And then we should have time for questions and discussion at the end. So getting started with QA. On a broad level, the platform testing goals are to validate that the business goals of the product team have been met. And we also want to verify that the acceptance criteria is behaving as intended. Pretty high-level general goals, which most people, if you've worked in QA at all, will be familiar with. Our strategy to get there: each veteran-facing services team, VFS for short, is responsible for testing its products. And we encourage you to test early and often and use multiple test types as appropriate. So essentially, every VFS team does their own testing, and then we on platform will verify or validate testing. So there's an element of trust here. And that brings us to the heart of what the QA process is on the platform for VFS teams, which is the QA standards. Now, the QA standards are, well, let me back up a second and say that as we mentioned, VFS teams test their own products, and the way they demonstrate that they have tested their products is by meeting the QA standards. Each QA standard is defined. It's defined and has a matching artifact that needs to be produced by the VFS team, and we will look at that artifact to determine whether the QA standard has been met. And for each of the 5 QA standards, it can be blocking or not blocking. And what that means is, if it's blocking and you have not satisfied a QA standard, then your product cannot launch on the platform until the issue is resolved. Whereas if it's not blocking, that's not the case. But let me stop, or actually go back a moment and to just talk a bit about the collaboration cycle, which is something that's relevant here. I'm not sure if you have much familiarity with the collaboration cycle, probably not. But essentially, for the purposes of QA, the collaboration cycle is a process which new products or products that are receiving updates move through before they launch on the VA.gov platform. And there are multiple touch points where the governance team will meet with the VFS team and talk about the product and discuss issues that may be found. And at the last touch point, which is called the staging review touch point, these QA standards are evaluated. So essentially, QA comes in at the end, and we are going to be looking at these QA standards to make sure that your product satisfies the standards necessary to launch. So as I mentioned, there are 5 different standards. The first one is the regression plan. And the overview basically is a regression plan is a suite of test scenarios that covers the functionality of your product before your changes that you've made in your current development effort. It could also be, if you're launching a brand new product, you're not going to have a regression plan, but it could be the case that you're launching a product that's new to the VA.gov platform, but which has an analog outside of the platform. And in that case, your regression test plan would sort of cover the precursor. For an example would be if you are creating an app that digitizes a form, and the form existed previously as a paper form, your regression plan would sort of cover what that paper form allowed the user to do. And that functionality needs to be maintained going forward. So you need to have this plan. It is a launch blocking standard. Ordinarily, what we're looking for is it's oftentimes a question of user stories, mapping user stories to show that you have a test that is mapping that the user story has been satisfied. And that brings us to a test plan, which is very similar to a regression plan, except that unlike the regression plan, the test plan is going to cover the new feature or the new product or the update to your product. And a test plan is going to help you organize and describe the tests that cover your user stories. So you really want to kind of make sure that those user stories have been tested and that you have also tested. Presumably, you're going to want to test different combinations of, for example, operating systems or screen sizes or different devices. And the test plan is a nice way to organize that. And so you execute the test plan, and the result or the output of executing those plans is the report that you provide to the governance team during the staging review. And that is how we evaluate that the test plan has been adequately prepared. So this is also a launch blocking. You need to have a test plan and execute the test plan. And a related standard is called the traceability reports, which is it's connected to the test plan. It's basically a way of demonstrating how good your test plan is. And it has two components. The first component we call the coverage for references. And it's really a report or a summary or some kind of a way of conveying that your test plan is covering your user stories. Because the quality of the test plan is that it's comprehensive, and it's comprehensive if it covers your user stories. So usually this could be like 75% of our user stories were contained in the test plan, and that would actually be the coverage for references, that number. And similarly, summary of defects is demonstrating that the defects you found were found because you executed your tests. If you found a lot of defects that were not covered by your test plan, then your test plan was probably not comprehensive enough. So these are just another way of evaluating your test plan. But this is not launch blocking. So although it's usually not that difficult to generate if you have generated a test plan and executed it. Our fourth standard is end-to-end test participation. And by end-to-end tests, we are basically talking on platform, at least, about writing Cypress tests. And you need to have at least one specification. It is launch blocking. We don't specify, at this point at least, we don't specify how you want to break that specification up, how many tests you need, and whether you have covered everything. We're sort of trusting the teams to write their end-to-end tests at this time, but it is launch blocking. So again, that you've got to have that, and then similarly, that brings us to unit test coverage, which is an artifact. This is a standard, and you generate your coverage report, which is connected to your unit tests. And for us, we need to have 80% test coverage in each of the lines, functions, statements, and branches categories. And this is launch blocking as well. One thing to mention that sometimes is a little confusing is, suppose you're working on an update to an app. When we say the unit test coverage, what we mean is we always evaluate the entirety of the app. It's looking at the app level. It's not looking at the unit test coverage of the changes. It's looking at the entirety of the app when we evaluate the test coverage. So just make sure that the whole app is above 80% to satisfy the standard. So those are the standards, and those are the ways that you satisfy them. And as I said, all that is evaluated during the course of your product moving through the collaboration cycle. It's evaluated at the end. But in order to generate these artifacts and to make your product as robust as possible, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the tools and technical information that can help you and which platform has made available. The first and maybe the most important is TestRail. TestRail, it's a tool that helps you organize and perform your manual testing. And here I'm talking about regression plans, test plans, and traceability reports. It's not required to be used. You can generate the artifacts that we went over really any way you want, at least at this time, as long as you communicate the information to governance team in a way that we can understand. But TestRail is a tool that can make your life easier. And there are a lot of resources that can help you to jumpstart the process. So, for example, if you wanted to make a test plan in TestRail, you can import user stories and generate test cases based upon them, and you can create different configurations for those different test cases for different browsers or OS configurations, which you're usually going to want to do, and it keeps things nicely organized for you, and then you can report your execute the tests and report your results, and based upon that, you can TestRail will automatically generate traceability reports for you. Then so you basically have that done, and you don't have to really you get it for free, and it can be a nice way of keeping your product in sync. So the test plan at the end of one initiative sort of becomes the regression plan of the next. And if everything's in TestRail, it sort of makes that easy. But again, it's up to the team. And we do have resources on the platform that can help you about different features and different options available. So, if you're going to use TestRail, we definitely recommend checking that out. And another issue that I think is definitely worth talking about, partly for development and partly for trying to get generate your artifacts, is the tests in the continuous integration pipeline, or the CI pipeline. And so the end-to-end and the unit tests, they run in we use GitHub Actions, and they run in a CI/CD pipeline. And the CI workflow, there is a CI workflow that includes jobs for the unit tests and the end-to-end tests. And so every time you open a PR, this workflow will run. And if you want that PR to be merged into the main branch, all the tests have to pass. And there are a lot of tests. There are, I think it's probably like 9,000 or more unit tests, and there's 600 or 700 end-to-end tests. And so running the workflow takes time, but more importantly, you want to make sure that that everything passes and you can get through. And so just to give you an idea of what things look like and how you kind of interpret them, what you're seeing on the left here is a screenshot from a pull request, and you can see there's a variety of jobs on the left, and here we're looking at end-to-end tests. The end-to-end tests are run in multiple different jobs in parallel because they take a long time to run. And you can see, you can get a summary of your test results. And if something did fail, you can click on this, for example, the Cypress test summary is its own job, and it lists a Mocha Awesome report, a link to a Mocha Awesome report, which will then take you to show you details about everything that failed, and will hopefully help you to fix the problem. And similar situation for unit tests. There's only one job for the unit tests, but you can, if something fails, you can check it out and see what failed and why. Hopefully why. So the problem is, or not exactly the problem, but something to be on the lookout is when things fail and they don't seem related to your PR. And the question is, why is that happening? And one of the big issues with this whole process is what we call flaky tests. Basically, it's one which sometimes fails, and it sometimes passes, and it's sort of indeterminate. usually it's a question of asynchronous functions, or it's a question of test order, because the order of the tests are randomized between different CI runs to basically to try to look for issues like this. And it can affect unit tests or end-to-end tests. The problem is if a flaky test gets merged into main, and then you branch off main, and then you try to push a PR, and now the flaky test might start being flaky, and you can't merge your PR into main. And this can be very frustrating. So there are several techniques to avoid this happening. The first and sort of the first line of defense is from you as a developer, try to make sure your tests are not flaky before you push them. And CI itself is looking for flaky tests. There are stress tests to look for flaky tests, and they will be quarantined if they're found, and you can be blocked from pushing PRs if your app, in which you're working has flaky tests. But despite all that, sometimes they will still pop up. And if, say, you want to get something out and the daily deploy is coming up, it can be very frustrating. So when you see tests failing in your CI/CD, just keep that in the back of your mind that maybe it's not something you did, but it could be a flaky test. And frequently syncing with the main branch can help if someone has pushed a fix. And if not, you can reach out to the support for further guidance. But I did want to also mention that if you are writing tests on the platform, definitely consult some of our best practices pages, because they have utilities and patterns that will help you get up and running and that are used throughout the platform. And familiarizing yourself with them will make your life easier. And then, as I did allude to before, when you do want to get help, if you have, say, a flaky test or something else related to the CI/CD platform system, reach out to the VFS platform support channel. They're very responsive, and they will hopefully help get you unstuck as fast as possible. And they are there for you, so don't hesitate. Now, if there are any questions or discussions on what we've just gone over, now would be a great time to share them. And I will just stop sharing the screen, that is. And so I know, John, you may not have anything, but
I do have a few questions, actually. I was actually